is it a myth, the American dream, or is it just evolving to a place that we can't quite define it yet?
I low-key think it's a myth, and I'll let people process that by their own. And as Paola was talking about her own privilege, I also need to check myself because I have a DACA, which is a work permit. And sometimes, like Paola, when I'm interviewing mixed status families, I'm like, I, I, I feel the privilege that I hold in this space, whether it's in media or whether it is just having financial stability. And so for me, it's a myth. And other theories and other ways that we see out there.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like the key question that we're wrestling with as a nation and in American politics right now is like, you know, are we truly, or are we all headed towards this like multiracial, pluralistic, diverse democracy? Or at our core, is it always the case that we keep going back to the roots of this country, right? Which is a country that was founded upon the principles of white supremacy. And it is a country that at every turn, every time it can, it has oppressed and oppressed and oppressed every attempt to sort of diverge, you know, from those origins, no? And so I think that's kind of what we're wrestling with as a country. And I think, not to bring it back to politics, but I think that's why perhaps like the 2024 election once again was such a shock for so many people, because it was like, here we are again. No, we had an opportunity to elect a Black woman president, and yet again we couldn't do it. No, here we are again. We've had multiple attempts at passing comprehensive immigration reform, and yet we don't do it. No, here we are again separating families. And so I think it's almost like at some point we have to be real with what we're dealing with. And if it is true, in fact, that are we or not a country of immigrants? Like, are we or not, you know, like all of these things have for so many years, like shaped the way that we think of this country, right? Which is, yes, it's a country full of dreams and the American dream. And perhaps we're not.
Do you think that the American dream can only exist in competition to someone else's?
I think that's how we've typically defined the dream, no? And I think if we define the dream as sort of a dream of possibilities, then yes. But I think if we define the dream as the dream is based on rights and freedoms and justice and movements, then it's different. And I think that's why when you ask this question, people are going to give you two different versions. Yes, I attained the dream of possibilities, but no, I didn't attain the dream of like rights and freedoms. But I think because we're so used to talking about this in like economic terms and in the frame of upward mobility, I think that's where people do get threatened, no? Because then the dream means that you're taking something away from the other person, no? That you're climbing up the ladder, but not the other person. And I think, unfortunately, if we've learned something within American politics and within Latino politics, is that we too can be greedy, no? And that we too many times don't want the other immigrant to climb up the ladder the same way that we did. And that is a harsh reality of where we are, no? That in this country, we're so used to working so hard to attain that dream, and they make it so hard to do it, that we then become so corrupted that we don't want the same opportunities for that other person. And that is something that does happen.
Yeah. Brian, you talked about that what you want this country to give you is empathy. And I can imagine that part of that is also tied to this transition and this, now that we've seen that there are certain pockets within our community that feel a particular way about immigrants, who might feel a particular way about your own family story. Has that been part of the difficulty of figuring out what you want from this country?
Yeah, and I think it's because I'm also queer, you know, I'm gay. And so we have our own struggles, our community struggles, individual struggles. But I wanted to bring back to what Paola was saying, is that some people will be like, oh, well, I made it and I'm fine. And why aren't you making it? I'm like, honey, we're not the same people, you know? There was a conversation at my dinner table. Mom, I'm sorry, but I'm going to say it here. She saw a video on YouTube, got her news from there. And she's like, why are these immigrants coming in this way? They're like invading the country. I'm like, Mom, you crossed the border with me in 1992. What are you talking about? And I had to check her. I'm like, you cannot be like talking about this news that you got from YouTube that I don't know what channel she got it from, with all these bad references. I'm like, you are a leader in your community. You cannot talk about immigrants this way, you are one. And so just going back to the fact that Paola brought up, like some people will pull up the ladder away from the next person that's coming in. It's happening. And so for me, it's just wild to see these things.
Yeah.